In our previous lesson, we were able to finish up our sketches, and so after that last lesson, I came through and just add a little bit more detail here, and you can see that I gave a lot of detail to the armor, and then I was also able to finish up the bow and firm that up, flesh that out. I did add a string, and so when you want to make that string, all you got to do is make sure you have your brush selected, and you just have just a regular point, and make sure that you don't have anything on for the brush that's going to like for the dynamics, as far as the shape dynamics. You turn that off so that you have just a solid point. And so, like, let's say we had a point size that was like 7, then you just click once and then click again and just make that straight line. Or click once, hold shift, I'm sorry, click again, you make that straight line. And I was also able to sketch in an arrow here. And so now we're going to focus on our flesh. And so I do want to turn on the shape dynamics for that. So all we have is just a regular brush, and I have smoothing on. And then for shape dynamics, I do have the control set to, for the size, set to pin pressure. And then as far as the brush tip shape, we do have the spacing set to 1%. And so that way there isn't any skipping when we draw. It's just a constant line. See, if you added the spacing and you drew that line, you can see that it's just a kind of jittery. You can see, kind of see it here in this line. And so let's go ahead and increase our brush size to maybe about 40. And we're going to reference our character, or our actual pose reference for just our base skin tone. And we're going to pull from maybe this side of the shoulder, somewhere in here, maybe even down here in the leg. So now that we have that color selected, I'm actually going to come through and let's double click on our background, and we'll just call this our main sketch. And we're going to use this as kind of a guideline as we lay these colors down. And we're going to grab all these layers, Control G. We're going to make a new layer. So select this little button right here to make a new layer. This will be our skin tone. And then we're going to create a path that we'll use to kind of cut out the skin shape. And so this is going to be very easy. All we'll do is make sure that we have our path selected when we create that path instead of a shape. We'll zoom in a little bit. I'm actually going to turn off the bow and the gear. We can even turn off the hair. And I'm going to create this path around the skin. And so just the areas where there'll be skin, but I'll make it all one continuous path here. So I'm just clicking and dragging, because I want this to be a really smooth edge on the skin color. So I'm just going to come through, and I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording, and when I'm finished, I'll come back and show you what we'll do next. Alright, we finished knocking out this path, and so what we'll do is we're going to make a selection based on this path, but there are a couple of things we'll need to do first. So we do have, I just want to point out that we grabbed the scalp, even though we're going to have some hair over that. And then this part of the hand, I went ahead and grabbed that also, because then we can just lay the bow on top of it and not have to worry about trying to fill in any gaps exactly, because we'll have that overlap. And then, you know, we did go ahead and grab this part of the body, even though there's going to be pants and a belt over it, but I just want to make sure that we had all of that information there. And so we're going to come and grab our path tab, so you can go to Window, Paths if you don't have that open. Let's just double click on that work path, because right now, the way it is, if we were to actually come back and create another path, we could essentially write over that path as it's a work path. So let's go ahead and call this our skin path. And we can click this little button. Also make sure that as you're creating your path that you're combining shapes and not subtracting. And so when I create this selection, just zoom out a little bit, And just make sure that you don't have a selection on everything but this path, because that could easily happen. If you do, just go and select your inverse there. And so we have our skin path selected. So now we can go to our layer, make sure that we have that skin tone, and then we're going to fill with our foreground layer. So I went ahead and turned off that group just so we can watch our skin tone. We're going to hit Alt and backspace, and that will fill that layer. And then go to your main sketch, so we make sure we still have that selection there. And if you don't, you can just hold Control and hit the icon of the skin tone. And so we still have that selection. We're going to turn on our group so that we can see our main sketch. And we're going to hit Control J. And what that does is it creates a new layer based on that selection. So now we can turn off our pencils. We can go ahead and call this group our pencils, since we keep referring to it as such. And so now we have this layer here that is our it's going to be like our guideline for our colors. And so let's go ahead, and I selected this color mode here. And let's just go down and take a look at some of the different options we have. We have multiply, we have color burn. Color burn looks really good. It kind of like takes the base color that we have, and it just kind of adds to that as far as like the darkness of it. Maybe we'll bring the opacity down just a little bit. Great. And now let's make sure that we have our skin tone selected, and we're going to lock that transparency. So we'll click this little button right here. And what we'll do is we'll just come in, and we're going to select that foreground color, and we're going to create a darker color. Hit OK. And let's grab our paintbrush. And so for our paintbrush that we had set up, remember that we have just our regular shape dynamics on. That's going to allow us to have pin pressure that controls it. And we're going to have smoothing on. So we're at about 40. Let's go ahead and close that up. And we're just going to kind of reference our pose over here. And we're going to add just some darker colors that will smooth out. And so you can see that this kind of comes in, that darker color does. And then you can see that also it comes down to the mouth, about like that. And then it will just kind of go right around the mouth, and then comes down around the chin, and of course underneath the chin, that was that darker color. And again, we're going to come back and we'll smooth all these out, but right now we're just blocking in our different colors here. And so we are going to have our gear, so our armor and things that will cover up a lot of this skin. I just want to make sure I get down the foundation. So actually, this arm is much darker than the rest of the body. So I'm going to fill that in. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit X. And so that is the white color. But I'm going to sample that lighter color just so that I can come back and paint these knuckles. Just like that. And you can see how in our reference, if I zoom in just a little bit, we're going to add just a little bit of color here to our skin tone. So let's hit X to go back to that darker color. And I'm just going to lay down some of that darker as I see it on her hand. You can see that this side of the hand is much darker. And then the tips of the fingers are darker. And so I'll just go ahead and color those in. And then we have that knuckle. This comes down about like that. And we're going to spend a little bit of time working on the hands after we're finished as we go through and create details for the rest. And then you can see that we have, so we'll come back even with a darker color and hit some of these skin tones. But I want to point out that we also have the shoulder. So it's almost like a line that comes through, you can see. And we'll go ahead and darken that up. But then there's an even darker color down here below. And so we'll hit that up also. So I'll go ahead and darken this up, and then we'll even come back through with a darker color. Let's take a look here. I'm going to now hit up just a little bit of the hand. So this part of the hand is a little bit darker. And then where the bow would leave just a little bit of a shadow over that thumb, we can darken some of that. And then just the tips of those knuckles were a little bit darker. And then underneath. And then, let's see, we have the top of the arm looks like it's a little bit darker. And then just a little bit on this part of the arm. But then we have this other darker color. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this color down. And then we have this darker color that we'll go ahead and pull from. So let's tap that foreground swatch. Actually, before we do that, let's take a look again at the face. I'm going to add just a little bit of darker color on this side of the eye. I'm just going to fill that in just a little bit, and we can come back with some lighter colors here in a little bit. And then just on this part of the nose, this side of the nose. And then let's go ahead and tap that foreground color, and we're going to pull this value down just a little bit more. And we're going to just hit some of these edges in the top of this eye, closer to the nose. Bring that down, and then remember we have this side of the arm that's much darker. About like that. And then right underneath the chin. And then we also have, if we took a look at the arm, we have that, even though it'll be covered up, but we do have that color down underneath the arm. And one thing that we didn't take a look at was the belly, because it'll be covered up mostly, except for the armor where it doesn't cover up. So if we took a look at that, where the armor hits the gear, you can see that just that area. So what we'll do is we'll sample. We'll actually just sample that other color. We'll add just a little bit of that value to this side of the belly, and then on this side. And we can smooth that out later. I'm actually going to come through and add just a little bit more value here. About like that. And then I'm going to zoom out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab that layer that we've been using. I'm going to lighten up that opacity just a little. About like that. And I'm going to combine these two layers. Control E. I'll just rename that our skin tone. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to now grab some lighter colors and work on some of these skin tones a little bit. But before I do that, we're going to move on to our gear, and we're going to start blocking in color for our gear. So